Hello, everyone. It is Kenny here, Basketball Rewind draft episode. So today we are talking about Matas Buzelis, and I'm joined by Beyond as well as Coach. We know that we will at least have a pick. We still don't know if we'll have our own pick. It's looking like we might. And so either way, we're going to be talking about prospects all over the board, as you guys have seen. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the G League prospects, Matas. So, with that being said, let's get into it. Coach, your thoughts.
Matas Buzelis, 6'10", 6'11". We're not too sure. About 200 pounds. From the G League Ignite, he was the number 5 of the top ESPN 100 high school players last year. So very highly touted prospect. You're looking at a guy who's a very versatile forward. I've heard some comparisons on what he might be. I've heard anywhere from Lamar Odom to Andre Karolinko. I think defensively, he's got that AK-47. Those who used to watch him, versatility on defense. I mean, he's averaging about 2 blocks a game now on about 30 minutes. That's pretty good. He does everything fairly well on the court. I wouldn't say that he is going to shoot the lights out like a Grady Dick, but standstill shooting, he's okay. I think his 3-point percentage until recently was around 37 to 39% from 3. I think it was mainly for the month of February and into March. It was anyway, but that's kind of gone downhill a little bit since then. But you're looking at a prospect that's probably going to go in the top 10 of this draft, and a team like the Raptors, if they were to keep their pick, he would be in that range. And for those who watched the Rico Hines runs from back in the summer, you may have noticed this kid in one of the first episodes where he was playing against some Raptors players, and as like an 18-year-old, before even playing one game for the G League Ignite, he stood out. He's a very bright player. I don't see too many weaknesses in his game. He's got to work on his shooting, but other than that, he's got kind of everything else. He's a good connective piece. He can rebound. He can rebound well. Create his own shot. He's intriguing. That's for sure. He's going to go top 10.
Yeah, I mean, this is one draft that's very interesting because you look at it and it'd be nice to have a very high-end role player. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to get someone who's going to change the trajectory of your franchise. But it could be someone who could play a big role into the future. And I think Matas is pretty interesting. Now, of course, measurements, we don't know until the combine happens. Sometimes, I mean, forget who the prospect was. It was Matas, because I was talking to you, Coach, and I was saying, it gave me on the G League site itself, it says literally at the top of the page, it says his birthday is the 13th of October. Then at the bottom of the page, it says it's November 13th. Yeah. Which is it? We don't know. But it is, I'm assuming it's the 13th of October. I think it was, November 2nd. I'm guessing it's the 13th only because his number's 13, but I digressed. So we will get into his offense first. And I agree with you. I think I can understand why some of the comparisons that have been made are being made the way that they are. He's someone that you look at him and he does a little bit of everything. He's not little, but he's a little king's thing. And I think we can always use a little bit more of that on this team because he does a little bit of everything. Obviously talk about the offense first. I just said that, but I think he's a good, not just a secondary, but also on-ball creator. To your point, in high school, he was shooting above 40% from 3 as he's adjusted to the NBA line. At times, I mean, last time I checked the numbers, which was, I think, yesterday, it was around 28 and something percent. Not a lot of good three-point shooters in the top of the draft. Funny enough, his teammate, Tyler Smith, who we'll cover another time, shoots 40%. But I think there's something there. There's a body of work. And as he continues to adjust to that NBA line, it'll be interesting to see him adjust. I think he has a really good face-up game. I think he's shown, interestingly enough, for someone that height with that length and stuff like that, he's got some pop to him. It's not necessarily the most fluid, but it's not that, it's not bad. I've seen him do euros, I've seen him do, hesitation dribbles, I've seen him, you know, basically be able to read opposing defenses and do stuff on ball. I believe he was this is always a scary thing. He was a point guard in high school. It seems like everyone was a point guard in high school. But yeah, and so as a playmaker, I see actually the comparison between Franz very strongly there because there's definitely some upside there, and it's not just as a secondary playmaker. I think also he has good control. Now, to your point, first time I noticed him, Rico Hines. One of the other, I've been following him throughout the season, but one of the other times when I thought he had a really good moment was during that Rising Stars. Because he had a couple, turn around, step over both shoulders and pop it over a guy in the mid range. I'm like, this guy can do some stuff. He's a really solid offensive as well as defensive rebounder. I think that's really important. And another thing is he seems to have his eyes up because anytime the opposing defense is looking the other way, he finds the right time to cut. And I think that that's really important. He uses his length, right now to create space in a good way on drives. And I think he's not the fastest. I mean, when you get up to that speed, it's hard to be the fastest. But I think he has a fairly decent first step. I'd give it like a B plus, say, and a solid functional handle. But it's not. I think even just saying it's functional is doing him a little bit of a disservice. So that's kind of where I stand with how he is. He does a little bit of everything on offense. I think he has a fairly quick, fast jumper. The mechanics look solid. Very high release point, obviously, because of how tall he is. 20% usage. It has gone up a little bit now that Ron Holland's out, for the season. But overall, there's a lot to, as a floor of a prospect, there's a lot there. Beyond, your thoughts?
It's strange. In some ways, he's more fluid in this case than Scotty from this standpoint. But I have the same feeling with him, where sometimes he's driving and I don't know how the ball actually gets in, but it gets in. It's not like it's not. I can't put my finger on it. It's not smooth.
The turnaround when he turns around with it, like the foot planting is not bad, but it's still a little stiff.
Yeah, I even tell also especially when he's doing drives from the 3-point line, it's hard for me to put my hands around what it is, but it's just like as I said before, he's not effective with it. It just seems like it doesn't seem like he'll get all the way there sometimes. Like, okay, and somehow he gets all the way there. But the comps to Kirilenko and Odom, I think are I can see that. I can see that, especially defensively for Kirilenko. From the weak side, I think his anticipation of the weak side. I think he's, I think it's probably one of his strengths. Offensively, your point, he has like kind of like all the type of shots you want from a good score in the NBA, where you can find spots in the court, be it mid range, off of each shoulder. The 3-point shot, that was a little bit of work. He's decent around the hoop to finish, but I still don't like the size element of it. And I think there's going to be an interesting experiment with a guy like him because where he lands in this draft might say a lot about what GMs and front offices are thinking about this type of prototype of this type of player. A few years back, this guy would be very much a high concern to play in this type of guy with his size and his slimness. But I think now with Wemby and with Holmgren, I do wonder if guys are a little less skeptical, a little more bullish on trying someone with this prototype. I mean, obviously Porzingis is kind of having a bit of a resurgence. He's kind of in that realm too. I do wonder a little bit if this type of guy now with this type of frame can be somebody they think, how the game is going. And if the rule changes aren't too drastic, a guy like this can survive and not be an injury concern. The other thing I do wonder a little bit, the other guy kind of reminds me a little bit about, this is where my gray hairs come back in this case here for these young fellas in this case here. He reminds me of the other guy a little bit, Detlef Shrimp a little bit. He reminds me a bit of him a little bit, more young Detlef, not so much later Detlef in Seattle where he's more spot up. But young Detlef, he give you a little business from everyone in the court. And he reminds me a lot of him a little bit back in the indie days. I think he has a little of that in him too. So he's gonna be a nice role player. And also too, man, pedigree, man. Like, listen, man, Lithuanian players, man, they rarely flop in the NBA. Okay, just being straight. Like if you just want to get a guy you know is gonna be in a rotation at some form, you get yourself a Lithuanian player, you good. He's good. He's gonna be playing for you in some form or fashion. And I think they've always done pretty well. Like all the European nations that come in the NBA, they probably have one of the best success ratios in my mind of guys you could trust and say, you know what, this guy's gonna be all right when he gets in the NBA. So yeah, I don't mind him. I mean, if we're looking at it from a Raptors perspective, the fit concerns me a little bit. Because I don't know what you do with a guy like him. Like, like where do you play him? Because he kind of bump into some other guys. And he's not quite a true four. He's definitely not center. Yeah, you can't play him there. And,
no, I see him more as a 3 more than anything. That's how I see him.
So now you're looking there at 3. There's a lot of guys in different circumstances and different lineups that lately we put at 3, including Scotty. And you're sitting there going, because I mean, I guess the way you could look at it, if
you play Scotty at the 4, depending on how people see Scotty, I think it might end up working things out well from that perspective.
Yeah, because in a sense he's a little bit
till Cooper Flag comes on the team. But
he's a lot like in that sense he would fit like how Ricochet, who we haven't talked about yet in this season. They just think of slotting him. So yeah, he's an intriguing pick. I would be curious to see what. I think he's one of those guys that it depends where he lands.
So you talked about the defense, and so to get into that a little bit more, here are some of the things that I looked. The hips flipped really well. I always talk about hip flip. Did it really well. I like that. He does something that he needs to work on, which is he uses his hands to brace for the to absorb the impact. Now that's fine, but he needs to be careful not to be too handsy at times. And so I think that at times he was a little bit too handsy, and we will see from that perspective if he can kind of just be a little bit more disciplined. He hasn't been called too much, but you could see him getting called at the next level. But then again, with the rule changes, you never know. I think you both touched on it. Strong help defender, good recovery, good wingspan. On ball is generally good, so he is a switchable defender. And so that's where I think, I'm not saying that he's, OG on defense, but he can switch on defense and be a solid on-ball defender, and that was something that impressed me. He needs a little bit more discipline in that area again, but yeah. And then one of the things I know is he did like the AD/Bill Russell, who was the OG at this move, where one hand's up and one hand's to the side when he's trying to deny someone who's penetrating the lane. And I think that that's important because he has the length to disrupt passing lanes, as well as up top, and he had solid closeouts. So really good at reading the floor, both on offense and on defense. I'll say for a guy like this, you look at his footwork and I compare it to Chet's in his first summer league game. And Chet's in his first summer league game was tripping over his feet. There are times when I feel like you're right. It's almost like his feet get stuck a little bit, but he's not tripping over it. He's not like Chet would literally have his feet crossed like that, right? And like I'm not seeing that. It's just more like how he kind of prances around, so to speak. It still needs a little bit of emphasis for the work.
I like his talent. I think he's one of the more talented players in this draft. Just the versatility that he has, offensive and defensively. But his length at 6'10", 6'11", you're not going to find many guys like him in this draft. Not to say that he's the best fit for the Raptors per se, but if they are just thinking, you know what, we need talent, period. We are so talent deficient. We don't know what this is going to look like. We're just going to draft the best talent. He's there at 6. He's got to be a guy you consider because this team stinks on defense. For one, he can bring that. He's versatile.
Yes.
He's versatile. Kenyon said it looks like he's able to guard a few positions. He looks fairly disciplined. Some of the fadeaway jumpers that he takes actually doesn't look too bad. It looks under control. His thing is the working on his 3-point shot, but everyone does that today.
And I
just
mean,
like his, I
if
like his
he's
feel for the game, connected piece. I think him and
yeah.
Scotty in that sense could work because they're both high IQ connected piece players. But if you do that, you got to have shooters around these guys.
Well, I was also going to say from the standpoint that number one, he's not afraid of the moment, right? I'm not saying he's just like
Yes,
give me the ball and like I'm good, but like
he ain't afraid.
he ain't afraid. He plays with some
No.
force, and we see that. I'm not going to say the words that he said in summer league, but or not summer league, but in the Rico Hines, but he was cussing some dudes out and he was talking some trash, right?
Yeah, he's a.
Yeah,
He, I always like to, there's good or good to great athletes and jump out of the gym athletes. He might he's close to a jump out of the gym athlete. Just some of the things that I've seen on him, I'm like, wow, he can
yeah, where he's getting above
really,
the rim and then slamming it
yeah.
down.
He's
Yeah,
got he's got like he's a very very good athlete. So there concerns with there are with I think the shooting and stuff like that. But man, he's almost got everything else you might want in a prospect. Though he's got to get stronger. I'll be clear about that. He's thin, but he's got to get stronger.
so the shooting, I'm not sure how to read it. I'll put it as an asterisk because he shot 40 something percent, 43% or 41% in high school. We'll see.
Yeah, it could be just maybe he's not a guy used to taking this much of a load offensively, maybe, or
Mhm.
having this much attention. He has to get used to it. I think the other thing I would be my only concern. I mean, it's a little bit. So it was a small sample size, so I'm not saying he's doing it all the time, but I do wonder if he relies on his length a little bit when he gets beat. I see a few times in some
Yeah,
instances where he gets beat and he knows he's that long, so I'll just come back behind you and block the shot. But
I'll give you a counterpoint to that.
yeah,
You go back and you watch the Rico Hines stuff. He kept Jalen Green in front of him.
yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I trust me. I mean, the coach's point. I root for their team down to 401, and believe me, we gonna have a top 6 pick. And I trust me right now. I would be open to that and to having him on the side on the team. I said the other day when we talked offline, we need front court help now. So if he can fill out to that, yeah, he's about 210 now. Man, we get on that NBA pro team program. He could get 230, 240, 240. Yeah, I'm as a Pistons fan. Yeah, I'm open to that.
Yeah, I don't know if he's like a. It's hard to say if he's like a top 3 or 4 player in the draft. I think he's a top 3 talent in the draft.
Yeah, because
I
he's so
think
young too, right?
yeah, he's young. I think there's good feel for the game.
There's another team I root for too. You fit real nice there too.
I don't think he'll be there for that team though.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll be there for that team.
Because man, him getting kickouts from there for those two guys, or him just kind of just closeouts. Oh my gosh! Yeah.
So here's a good question. Now that by the time this comes out, because this week, people would have seen the Cody Williams. Would you take him over Cody Williams at say the 6th pick?
I still feel Cody Williams has more upside.
Because Cody Williams has had some down games recently, and people have kind of fallen out of love.
Yeah, I'm buying that, man. Yeah, I remember last year after a certain individual for Alabama was in some trouble, and everyone's saying, "No, what is he really a top 5 pick?" And I'm sitting there going, "Like, if I'm Charlotte, no respect you Scoot fans out there. There's a couple here on this podcast. I said, if I'm Charlotte, pick Miller, okay." Pick Miller, okay. Not just saying. Your boy was saying, stick with him.
I get reminded every day.
Yeah.
It's not over yet. It's not over yet for Scoot, and he has improved. I'll say that Scoot has improved throughout the season. But
all I think is the fit was right. I'm sitting there going like, "Yo, man, this dude's the best small forward in this draft by far." And it's like, if I'm Charlotte, you want a guy who can finish with LaMelo, and even though he was struggling near the end of the year and the tournament, it's like, nah, man, that talent ain't going anywhere. And I think this might be a similar scenario where Williams might have a tough, he might have a tough, the tough end of the season. But I think the talent is still there, and I would stick with it, man. I think he's still a bit higher than than Matas. Like,
I think Matis may have a higher defensive ceiling, but as an offensive floor, I think Williams gives you a much more closer to a plug and play. Now, funny enough, Matis has a much higher built out mid range game. So I will say that because he's doing a lot of the stuff that you'd want him to do. So I don't know. It's I go back and forth on these two. This one's a tough one.
This one's a tough one. I might have to go with Matthes. And I like Cody Williams. If he is legit 6'8", Cody Williams, that might change things. But if it comes back that he's like 6'6",
yeah.
I'm going with the guy.
I was saying you shrink taller. Or 6'5" is like it was like Jarris Walker, and it's like exactly. People are trying to sell you. It's like, oh really? It's his neck. It's like, okay, he has a strong neck. That's great for him, right?
But I think that's a great point by Coach. And I think the other thing too with him is what I think I like with Matas, which is unusual in this day and age, because everyone's here shooting the three. He's kind of built his game up the old school way.
Yeah,
it's like There's like I'm working from in, and I'm working my way out. So the mid range is actually in a pretty good spot already, which is actually unheard of by prospects these days.
I mean, we just went through it, like, even with Cody Williams, where we were talking about, he relies too much on the floater. And this guy will attack the hoop. Now, sometimes around the hoop, he will have these, crafty finishes. We'll say Grady-esque, so that Raptors fans can visualize it. Yes.
Yeah, Grady-esque already.
Right? We'll just say, there you go. Hey, shout out to Reese.
It, my boy. Right? Grady-esque. I love it.
But, at the same time, I lean, it's tough, because, like, even as I talked it through, it's just, like, there's things that I like. I really like Cody Williams, but there's things that it's like, that 3-point shot, if it's there, I really do see Matas. I know he's, the height is 6'11", but I think he's more of a 3 than anything. And here's the thing with him is that, like, I think that he could work really well defensively. And if you can't get the center prospect right this draft, at least you can counter it by, forget this vision 6'9", or vision for us 6'5" or whatever. Do 6'11".
Right. But okay, this is interesting from this standpoint, right? Like, do we assume too much that he's, and I count myself in this, that he's gonna be a 3? Because I mean, like, let's face it, if he even eats, like, puts on like 10, 15 pounds, he's down 225. I mean, I don't think we thought Chet would be playing 4 as much as he is right now. Like, if you had to tell me even 6 months ago that Chet would be playing this much 4, and some nights he's playing 5 for OKC in some lineups, I would have been shocked. I'd be like, "There's no way you're putting Chet home. We got a little stick there, and they're getting away with it." Now, I'm not sure what's going to happen in about 3-4 weeks from now, but they're getting away with it so far. My point is, should we assume he's automatically a 3 in this type of NBA? I'm not sure.
We live in the age of position with basketball, but we know that he can't guard the big centers of the league. We already know that, but he's going to have to play some 3 or some 4 for sure. I think if he was next to, like, big bruising center, he can play. I think he can get away with him playing the 4. Just one of those versatile 4s as well, who would be like a tough matchup for some guys.
Well, I just think Scotty has, I think Scotty has a size already.
Yes. Right. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'm not sure we should just assume that he will be a 3 based on the type of players we're seeing now getting away with that. Because I think even Wemby, I think we all kind of joked and said Wemby playing 5.
So do you have Scotty then as a 3 then next year? Hypothetically.
What I'm saying is, if the Raptors were to choose him, I think the roles are connected. One could play 3, one could play 4. I don't think.
Okay. That's fair. Because I just keep thinking, like, I want to see more of Scotty making, almost like an offensive hub from the post.
Oh, I agree. I've always wanted that for him. Like, that's my, I think, ideal way where he is. But all I'm saying is, like, if you have this guy playing when his 3-point shot's not great, but he has other skill sets, like in the mid range, we might have another scenario, not quite like a Siakam scenario, but you have a scenario where a guy can actually create some offense below the 3-point line, and Sky can get back to getting some clean looks from the 3. All I'm saying is like I don't know if I should assume in this world that we live in the NBA that a guy with that type of frame automatically is a three because
That's
we've
fair.
now seen two or three guys. Even my man Dallas, he technically plays center, and I swore in this case, man, he needs a little more protein.
Who's this Lively?
Yeah, and he's playing five, right? Like from day one, they're not trying to groom him into five. No, he's like, hey man,
No, they're not taking the Mobley approach.
exactly. He's like, kid, no, but you're playing five now. Like, sorry, son, that's the way it is. So I don't know if we should just assume those things now for these guys, man.
I'm also just going. Part of it is also like the positions that he's played for in the G League, right? Because you have a guy like a Tyler Smith, his teammate, who's also doing really well, and he's like, you know, I guess a 4-3, if you will, instead of a 3-4.
Mm,
And whereas Matt has more plays like 3-4. I think
right,
he can do it, but it's just like, and they're around the same height. You know,
right,
Tyler Smith is 6'11".
right.
So it's like you know, better 3-point shooter, but you
Right.
know, it is interchangeable, but it's mainly I think it because of the amount of ball handling that he does from above the arc and in half court scenarios, right? Where it's
Right.
like he's not reliant on the secondary playmaking.
Right.
That's why I have him as a 3. But
I,
it's fair.
yeah, I guess to summarize my point is, are we maybe looking at a scenario where this is the future of what centers look like, right? Because when you look at the centers currently,
Mattis?
yeah, what we look at
Oh,
the
he's not a
centers.
center. I would not put him at center.
Well, you think so? Not now. That's my point. Because when you
Mm.
look at the league right now, how many hulking guys are out there? Like eight, maybe at most. And most of them on the other side of 30 pretty much pretty soon.
Yeah, one of the more hulking guys now, if you think about it, is AD. Funny enough, and now that he's
Right,
put on
right.
weight.
And which is ironic because we saw when he came out of Kentucky, he was about this big, right?
Yeah.
So my point is, if and AD is not a physical man in this case when it comes to playing the five, even so
No.
does it on skill, touch, timing. But my point is that when you look at the guys that are still what we call the hulking dudes, and be at 30 with a ton of injuries, how much longer he can play? Jokic at 30 pretty much now at this point, or he'll be at 28 or something like 29, right? Brooke Lopez, he only got a year or two in this league left. Like, you start going around here, Zubac's about 30 now himself. Like, there's not a lot of dudes about that big old school hulking center. There's not a lot of them still left. So what I'm
Yeah.
saying is when the time comes, you start looking around 4 or 5 years from now, even you watch college or international, they ain't really guys built like that. Like
And
we
I think
watched last summer, how many guys really were built like that were big, like or like that in FIBA? Wasn't that many?
Yeah, that's why I
yeah.
go against a guy like Klingon or
But
Klingon.
this comes back though to the age-old question of the draft. Is this for need or is this best player available? Because if it's for need, he's not your guy. Probably not.
No,
If it's best player available at 6, and some of the and like I'm assuming Sarr and Risa Shea, maybe Holland, for example, are off the board,
yeah,
that guy might be there. And I
that's why I
think,
asked the Cody Williams question because it's like a
yeah,
very
and Cody Williams might be there too. He might not be. He might be gone too in the top five.
yes.
It's a tough one. And if you keep that pick and it's 6 and he's on the board, you know, does he hurt Brady's development a little bit? Because this guy, if he turns out well, you might have to start him. He's a really high pick. You already get quickly RJ and Scotty. You still get Pirtle left. So I think those are a few things. Now, good players always figure it out anyway,
Well,
regardless. It's just egos. Does egos get in the way?
right. So,
Yeah,
well, yeah,
I think you can buy time in terms of the starting thing, but to
Mhm.
that it really depends on who plays well. You know, I think the easiest way to make sure that Grady gets minutes is back to my point originally. Gary probably is not going to be here, right?
and draft a front court player.
Yes, because you know someone who is small forward or and down.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, Grady will get time at the 3 a little bit, but really he's a 2-3 in my mind. You know, I think as soon as you're looking at a guard at that spot, yes, there are some guards that we'll obviously talk about in the future, like top pitch and stuff like that. But you could get into some minutes and developmental issues that you'll have to force certain conversations to happen a lot faster.
Right. So like right now we haven't done topics yet, but like for example, the two Kentucky guards, I don't want to pick on them because there's other guards as well too, but they obviously they're on top of mind for a lot of people. If I have my choice between one of the two Kentucky guards or this gentleman, I think I would take this gentleman over the two of them.
I would too.
Me too.
We might be in the minority in saying that. I know that there's some people that, but I just, for me, it's not even a fit thing. I just think that there's a certain skill set. Now, I see, I think Reed's the type of dude to have a very long career in the NBA as a floor, right? Like 10-year player at least. But I think Matas might be that as well, and that's not a bad, that I think that instead of talking about superstars, it's like who's going to have a long career, who's gonna make it to the third, fourth, contract. And I think both guys could, and for that reason, I would lean towards the guy with who's been able to demonstrate a more complete offensive skill set inside the arc with some flashes of the other stuff.
Yep.
And any final thoughts?
I honestly, he was a pleasant surprise. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I saw him last summer, I'm like, okay, he's lanky, but he's versatile, and he's a better athlete than I thought that he was.
Yeah.
I didn't suspect that he's aggressive. He, like you said, Kenyon, he's not afraid.
No.
He'll go for it. So I think there's a fair amount of talent there. That's for sure. And he gets in the right system, right developmental team. They might have a pretty good player on their hands.
Yeah, and I again, we didn't talk about it directly, but we kind of alluded to it. I would say his draft range. I'd be surprised if he got picked top 3. It's possible, but again, fluid draft. But I would say that I don't see him falling past 8. Let's say.
I do wonder though. Oh, who was the kid that got drafted? He was from Europe. This is like, oh goodness, probably 12, 13 years ago now. He only played a few.
No, he's talking about my man got picked in Detroit as number 2.
Yeah, Darko.
In the LeBron. Yeah,
no, not Darko. I think this kid was Croatian, if I remember correctly. I'd have to look it up. I don't have the name off the top of my head, but he had similar features to this guy. I mean, like long, 6'10", 6'11", can really jump over the gym, but he couldn't shoot, and that's why he didn't last in the NBA. And he came out then. Imagine doing that now today.
I was going to joke and say it's Poku.
No, not him either.
It's not, people. Don't worry.
So I have to look it up now. It's going to happen. But if we need to finish, that's cool.
Yeah, so I could stall time for an extra minute or two.
No.
Fair enough. So, coach called time. It's been Basketball Rewind. It's been another draft episode. People, like, comment, subscribe. Hopefully you enjoy these. You seem to enjoy them now that they're coming out. Now that people are slowly realizing the realities of the Raptors. Before it wasn't as popular to watch draft. Now you're looking at the draft because you don't really want to watch things. So enjoy Basketball Rewind. Keep it tuned until the draft comes out. And with that being said, that's been a show. And take care, people. Bye.
Yes.